Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Tobit, chapters 1 through 4.
And it's a new book.
Yeah.
It's a new day. It's a new year.
It is a new year. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Some sort of whatever noise they make for New Year's, a rattle or like a...
Yeah.
Don't you have anything?
No,
you could.
I could laugh at my expense.
There we go. We got some applause.
That was laughing at your expense. Okay, well, this book of Tobit, it tells the story of a good man named Tobit. That's what the Old Testament survey says. We also have Bierman's commentary on the Bible.
We have a lot of stuff.
We have the NIV Bible Commentary, Volume 6.
Yeah, we also have Tobit, a new translation with introduction and commentary by Carrie A. Moore. This is from the Anchor Bible series. So that's what we got. Those are the books that we'll be using.
I got to point something weird out.
What's that?
It's just a meta thing. Ruben, you've worn so many shirts that have looked amazingly jank on my screen.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's the way
it's only you.
Yeah, you do wear
Lawrence
those shirts a lot.
Lawrence has never worn a shirt that has distorted the screen.
Yeah.
But you do all the time. It's not on most cameras. It's only on low-quality screens.
Yeah.
People on their phones might notice and stuff. It's interesting. Ooh, it's only a little trippy. I kind of like it. So I thought I'd point that out.
So let's talk about this book.
Yes.
So Tobit.
I got plenty of notes here.
Talking about this guy who performs acts of charity and gets into quarrels and yada yada yada. It exists in two major forms. One's in Greek and the Great Uncial manuscripts of Vaticanus and Alexandrus.
Yeah.
Generally represented in English translations as AV, RV, and RSV.
Yeah, I have a good bit of notes on the manuscripts that it's based on and stuff like that. So as was mentioned before, primarily, at least, this version is based on Sinaiticus, and that's one of our primary manuscripts that we have. So here's what I got for you. So the preceding summary, which admittedly is not substantially shorter than the actual narrative, has been this is when right before they're about to summarize the thing. Shorter than the actual narrative, has been so detailed because it is based upon the Sinaiticus tradition, a Greek version that has gained popularity among biblical translators only during the second half of the 20th century, especially with the discovery of Semitic fragments of Tobit at Qumran. Prior to the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus in the Library of St. Catherine in the Sinai in 1844, Roman Catholic scholars were familiar with the Old Latin text of Tobit, which, as it turned out, had pronounced similarities to Sinaiticus. By contrast, Roman Catholic laity were usually aware only of Tobit as presented in the Latin Vulgate of Jerome, a translation substantially different from the Old Latin, and even more from Sinaiticus. As for Protestants, they knew Tobit as preserved in the Vaticanus or Alexandrinus tradition, reflected in the English-speaking world in the beloved King James Version. Of course, the beloved King James Version.
So there were Aramaic and Hebrew manuscripts at Qumran. So may have originally been in a Semitic language, but Tobit.
Yeah, I do have stuff on the original language as well.
But Tobit is not in the Old Testament canon. It's not in the Masoretic text. It is included in the Vulgate, and it is included in the Septuagint.
Yep.
So it's canonical for both Roman Catholics and Orthodox Christians.
So on the original language, since we already hit on that, I was going to get to it a little bit later, but the original language is still kind of open to question. There's still some debate around that, and I can flip to the arguments, for or against either one. I'm not going to, harp on them for too long. So in the past, part of the difficulty in determining whether Hebrew or Aramaic was the original language for the Greek recensions lay in scholars' disagreeing as to which Greek text should be the basis for purposes of analysis. Of 3 Greek recensions of Tobit, the one represented by Sinaiticus and the Old Latin contains the greater number of Semitisms.
Yeah, so there is some detail about this, just a short paragraph here. The Qumran manuscripts are fragmentary. Thus, for a primary text, one of the Greek recensions is necessary. There are 3 Greek recensions. G1, represented by 2 manuscripts, Vaticanus B and Alexandrius A. G2, represented by the Sinaiticus manuscript, and G3, preserved in MSS 44, 106, and 107. G2 has a strong Semitic flavor, many narrative details, and is substantially longer than the others. It has 2 major gaps, however, 4:7 through 19 and 13:6 through 10. G1 is written in more idiomatic Greek and is shorter and more concise than G2. G3 is fragmentary, preserved only from 6:9 to 13:8.
Yeah, so a little bit more on this. So there's a lot of Semitisms, right? And that usually hints at, an Aramaic or a Hebrew origin, right? And of course, there are also things in many texts like Aramaisms, where they show that it's necessarily that it was, Aramaic and stuff like that. So lots of debate here. So unfortunately, for the particular issue in question, the Greek translations of Tobit contain few, if any, egregious translation errors that indisputably presupposed either a Hebrew or Aramaic original. Even such Aramaisms as Aether for Assyria and Ethurias do not necessarily settle the question, for they simply may reflect an Aramaic environment. In fact, at Qumran, a Hebrew text may contain Aramaisms just as an Aramaic text may contain Hebraisms. In any event, a number of modern scholars also maintain that the absence of a Hebrew text in Jerome's day also argues for the priority of the Aramaic, and it goes on for quite a long time about the debate between this, but it summarizes as it is open to question.
As it should be.
Yes. So there's a few things in each of these that I want to go over.
Sure.
First being the time and place of writing.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, despite in Eerdmans, which is by Lester L. Grabe.
Oh, what a name.
Grabbe. So
yeah.
Grabe,
maybe.
I'm going to call him Grabbe. Okay.
I'll go with it.
Grabbe says, despite firm statements in some handbooks, the time and place in which much early Jewish literature is written is unknown. Tobit's no exception. The story is set in the diaspora, but it begins in the land of Israel. The writer seems to have knowledge of the diaspora, though his knowledge of the geography of Mesopotamia appears to be deficient. It could have been written almost anywhere in the ancient Near East. Egypt is presented as a very distant country, which might suggest that it was clearly a long way from Ecbatana, wherever the story was written. So, although somewhere
Ecbatana was also a capital of Persia, I believe, at some point. Or if it wasn't a capital of the Persian Empire, then it was a main city. I think Cyrus lived there for quite a long time.
Sounds good. Although somewhere in Syria or Mesopotamia is perhaps the most likely place of origin, there is nothing so far to rule out its having been written by a Jew living in Palestine. The time of writing is no more certain. The author knows of the rebuilding of the temple under Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest around 500 BC. On the other hand, he seems to have no knowledge of its desecration under Antiochus IV, 168 to 165 BC. This puts the composition of the book in the rather broad period between 500 and 200 BC. The book makes no reference to events during or after Alexander's conquest and shows no knowledge of Greek rule. The language of the Aramaic fragments does not look particularly early, being standard Qumranic Arabic, tending to rule out the early Persian period, though we cannot be absolutely sure that Aramaic was the original language. There does not seem to be anything to rule out a composition in the late Persian period, i.e. before 330 BC, but a date in the 3rd century is probably more likely because of the language. It also says...
Yeah, I do have a good bit on the date.
Yeah, I have just a little more. That speculation concerning the date of the book, this is from the Old Testament survey, speculation concerning the date of Tobit has ranged from the 7th century BC to the 3rd century CE.
Yeah, quite a big range.
Yeah, they kind of pointed out it had to do with that temple, right? His knowledge of the lack of knowledge of it, but knowledge of it, right, does help indicate its large range.
So there's a definite preference for the 3rd to 2nd centuries BCE. There are several reasons to support this date with regard to terminus aequo. The confusion concerning historical and geographical data in the 7th century Assyria excludes an early date for the book. The title Law of Moses or Book of Moses became current after the writing of the Book of Chronicles, the books of Chronicles. The author of Tobit presumes the authority of the prophets as proclaimers of God's word. The prophets were canonized around 200 BCE. The fact that the Jews did not accept this book of Tobit in their canon also indicates a late date for the work. The Maccabean revolt provides the terminus ad quem. There is no evidence in Tobit of the turmoil caused by the persecution begun by Antiochus IV Epiphanes. The emphasis on endogamy, a practice that died out in the 1st century BCE, the absence of comment on resurrection of the dead, whether belief or non-belief, and the discovery of copies of the Book of Qumran support a terminus ad quem in the 2nd century. Fitzmyer suggests that the Aramaic in the Qumran fragments represents the period between the end of the 2nd century BCE and the beginning of the 2nd century CE. The most probable date for the writing of the Book of Tobit, then, is between 200 and 180 BCE.
All right, so the range here is a little bit different. It's not like too far off, at least from more. So for the authorship on who wrote it, of course we don't know who this person is, right? They're anonymous, but the comment that's given is the author of Tobit was a Jew. More than that cannot be said with any confidence.
Wow.
So it's been suggested he was a Samaritan or a Sadducee. Whole lot of sects, and they point out like the kind of where the author's interests lie from a theological standpoint. And then furthermore, on the date that is given. So Moore places it between 250 and 175 BCE. So not like too far off, not extraordinarily far off, but a little bit different in range. So,
All right.
although the Book of Tobit has been dated as early as the 7th century and as late as the 2nd century CE, and even the 3rd, most scholars of the past 2 centuries have dated it to somewhere between 250 and 175 BCE. That is, after the canonization of the prophets as scripture, but before the Maccabean period, with its turmoil and strongly anti-Gentile attitude. Kargan, for example, thought a date in the 3rd century BC should not be ruled out. The book's geographical and historical errors, we're going to get to those, certainly argue against a 7th or even 5th century BCE date for the book, as do such phrases as the Law of Moses and the Book of Moses, which post-date the writing of Chronicles. So, yeah, one of the interesting things to note is that when it comes to the historicity of this book, to how people view, is it a true story? Is it not? Is it meant to be, literal or metaphor?
Yeah, this is apocryphal podcast. Why is this apocryphal?
Yeah. So, So traditionally speaking, it's probably very different now, but traditionally speaking, the Roman Catholics say, yes, this is historical. It happened.
And the Orthodox?
Well, everybody else says no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So I'm going to jump into this just a little bit here. So for some historical problems, I suppose. So the book's errors of fact have been a major reason for scholars denying its historicity. For example, the tribe of Naphtali was taken into exile by Tiglath-Pileser III, not Shalmaneser V. Sargon II, not Sennacherib, was the successor to Shalmaneser V. The trek between I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Regis or Regis, I don't know, and Ecbatana, which Tobiah accomplished in, quote, 2 full days, is actually a distance of at least 185 miles.
And as we know from that one campaign that took forever to move anywhere, that doesn't happen. It's like 30 miles a day if you're actually trying.
Yeah, well,
leaving
it can be
Nineveh.
more, but about this Naphtali bit, there is a little bit in Eerdmans about that, and I want to do it before you move on too far.
Okay, fine.
So Tobit's one of the tribe of Naphtali, not one of the better known tribes of Israel. This might suggest that Tobit was a real person rather than a fictional character.
Right. Like that's like as if that matters.
Yeah, this is possible, but Naphtali also appears in the Testament of Naphtali, which is one of only 2 books of the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs known from Qumran. In other words, there may have been reasons currently unknown to us why Naphtali was a significant tribe of origin for figures in Jewish tales.
Perhaps an early Essene authorship.
Maybe.
Either way, leaving Nineveh and going eastward, Tobiah and Raphael arrived in the evening at the Tigris River, yet Nineveh is actually situated east of the Tigris, unless a different Nineveh is intended. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff about the historical issues. Now, one thing that I found super neat was how it's so closely related in genre and in I guess kind of in narrative.
To the Book of Job?
No, not to the Book of Job.
Because that's what they keep pointing out in both of these.
See, well, it does have similarities to Job, but it is more similar to the Ahikar tale. Now, we've discussed that before, right? I think when we were discussing Job, we talked about the tale of Ahikar.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
So why don't we go over that again for those of us who don't recall the Ahikar tale.
So the Ahikar tale. So this secular folk tale was unquestionably used by the author of Tobit. The author of Tobit either modeled his Ahikar after it, or more likely assumed his readers' familiarity with it. The story, as presented in its oldest version, tells of Ahikar, a wise scribe and counselor to the Assyrian kings. And here's a quote. The sage, advanced in years and having no son to succeed him, decides to adopt his nephew Nadine and teach him all his wisdom. The young man is educated and presented to Asaradan, and in time takes his uncle's place at court. Nadine, instead of dealing kindly with his uncle, plots to discredit him and manages to convince Asaradan that the old man is scheming to overthrow the throne. In a rage, the king orders Ahikar killed. However, the officer sent to carry out the death sentence turns out to be an old friend of Ahikar, whom the latter once rescued from death. The two of them concoct a plan by which a slave is substituted for Ahikar and killed in his place. Evidently, the plan succeeds, but the end of the story is lost. Presumably, it is related to the restoration of Ahikar to favor and the punishment of Nadine. Over the past 30-some years, scholars have frequently observed that there actually was an Aramaic wise man by the name of Ahikar serving in the Assyrian court of Esarhaddon. Less frequently observed is that the Babylonian text mentioning Ahikar is not contemporaneous with him, but dates to 165 BCE. Therefore, the text from Uruk, and that's a very old civilization, by the way, Uruk,
Yeah.
does not confirm the historicity of the Assyrian Ahikar, but only an ancient tradition about him. Still, the Persian elements in the tale are quite believable. In any event, Ahikar's checkered career and proverbs were well known throughout the ancient Near East. Although we do not have the Ahikar story in its original form, a number of later versions have survived, starting with the Aramaic text from Elephantine, as well as later versions in Demotic, Syriac, Armenian, Ethiopic, and so on. However, the non-biblical... And hold on, I just want to point this out, actually. There is... check out this quote. So Tobit 4:7 from the Septuagint, pour your wine at the grave of the righteous, but give none to sinners. And then in one of the Ahikar tales, my son, pour out your wine on the graves of the righteous rather than drink it with evil men. So however, the non-biblical Ahikar, like Tobit's Ahikar, was not known for his almsgiving. Moreover, Tobiah and Nadine are a study in contrasts, the latter serving the former as a foil for narrative and didactic purposes.
Mhm.
The secular folktales mentioned above were certainly used by the author of Tobit, but the observation of Giffen should never be forgotten. Quote, compared with the profound and ubiquitous influence of the Old Testament itself, any other influences visible in the book are pale and insignificant. Well, fair enough, but still.
So there's a bit in both of these that I want to go over the themes and parallels.
Okay.
So first of all, about Ahikar, it is noted in the Old Testament survey that general knowledge of the story of Ahikar is presumed by the author of the Book of Tobit. Ahikar is made a relative of Tobit in 121, ostensibly to enhance Tobit by connecting him with such a renowned sage. Ahikar uses his position to help Tobit in his distress. He and Nadine come to rejoice in Tobit's joy. In the final reference to Ahikar, Tobit recounts a synopsis of Ahikar's life. So we'll get that. Also, there are a lot of parallels with the Joseph story that I'm not going to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But there are these other folktales. The folktale of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that was in here too.
Yeah, it covers...
Sadly, not the band, however.
Yeah, no. But the basic story of the Grateful Dead, as found in a widespread collection of folktales, concerns a man who impoverishes himself to ransom and bury a corpse that is being mistreated by the dead man's creditors. Shortly thereafter, when the poor man is on a journey, he is rejoined by a stranger who offers to be his servant in return for half or whatever the hero might acquire. At this point, the folktales diverge. The version best known in the Near East and Eastern Europe is the form that's related to the Book of Tobit. In this form, the tale is combined with the tale of the monster in the bridal chamber. The hero in this combination of tales is advised by the stranger to marry a wealthy princess whose former bridegrooms have all perished in the bridal chamber. The stranger then keeps watch on the wedding night and slays the serpent that emerges from the mouth of the princess to kill the hero. Subsequently, the stranger demands half the bride as his payment, but as he threatens to divide the bride with his sword, another serpent comes out of the bride, and she is freed from enchantments. The stranger then reveals himself as the Grateful Dead man, who the hero had buried. Several similarities exist between this story and the plot of Tobit. We'll get into those.
Mm-hmm.
But here, about the book of Job, there's stuff in both of these.
I'm sure.
So another pattern is in the book of Job. The structure of the two books is similar. Each book contains a framing section that sets the stage in the beginning and summarizes the situation at the end. The central action is set into this frame. The progress of Tobit's life is modeled on that of Job. Each man suffers bodily affliction, even though he's righteous. Each is grieved by the sharp words of a wife and prays for death. After his testing, each man is vindicated and rewarded. Imagery of light and darkness is prevalent in both books. More than a quarter of the occurrences of the words, or light, and chosek, darkness, in the Hebrew Bible are in the book of Job. The story of Tobit generally deals with moving from light to darkness and back to light. the theological themes pointed out in Eerdmans. It says, perhaps the most important aim of the book is implicit rather than explicit. This is the question of theodicy, or why God allows innocent suffering. This has been a major concern of theology in the past 2,000 years.
It's like with Epicurus problem of evil stuff,
which I can't find a source that actually says Epicurus.
Fine, fair enough, but still, problem of evil that's been around for a very long time.
Yes.
So that damn ship.
It's not often discussed in early Jewish literature.
Not the ship of Theseus. I'm just
the Book of Job is the most important book on the subject in antiquity. However, Ecclesiastes also relates to the subject in its own way.
Love Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Yes. And several Mesopotamian works are concerned with the problem. Like Job, Tobit's an innocent sufferer who is blinded by the act of doing a good deed. And Sarah is afflicted by the act of doing a good deed. Sarah is afflicted by a demon through no fault of her own. Tobit's answer is typical of literature of this time. God eventually put it all right, and doesn't recognize the deep contradictions experienced by many people in life. Nevertheless, despite not having the greatness of Job, it has asked and answered the question in its own way. Most of the explicit themes within the book serve to reinforce its theological message. One of the most important of these is that of family. Most of the actors are related, or supposedly so, such as the angel Raphael, who assumes the form of a kinsman. The question of duty to the family and responsibility to help out relatives appears several times. The need to marry those related is all important.
That's very Bhagavad Gita of them.
Yes.
To have the angel come in the form of a kinsman.
Yeah. So an emphasis which we might find a bit puzzling is on burial. Various passages stress the importance of proper burial, not only for one's parents, but also for anonymous Jews whose bodies are left in the streets. One might think that this was in some way related to an expectation of a resurrection or an afterlife, but neither of those is hinted at anywhere in the book.
Yeah, I would guess that it's more of the, whole respect kind of thing, right? Because there was if you weren't buried properly, that's like a shame unto you and your family.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But the general view throughout much of the Old Testament is that there is no afterlife, although some sort of shadowy existence might continue into Sheol. It was not the full person who had ceased to exist at death. Only in a very late book, such as Daniel, is a resurrection envisaged, though belief in the survival of the soul after death was already found in other early Jewish writings, e.g. 1st Enoch. Yet, alongside the view of no afterlife, there is evidence of a cult of the dead in ancient Israel, which could mean that some believed in the survival of the dead. Various aspects or types of Jewish piety are the subject of specific admonitions or exemplified in the text. One of the main ones is almsgiving, even though that's how Tobit loses his sight. Another is burial of the dead, though this is a sort of almsgiving. Other themes are observance of the festivals, observance of the food laws, angelology and demonology, and the golden rule. Other points which come up are an appeal to the authority of the scriptures, as well as prophecy of destruction of Solomon's temple and the rebuilding of a new temple. Although many of these points are general ones relating to the practice of Judaism, they are specifically related to the situation of Jews in the diaspora. They provide examples of how Jews can survive and even succeed while surrounded by a potentially hostile Gentile environment. When warned about the fall of Nineveh, Tobias takes his family east into Elam rather than west, back to Palestine, probably because of the prophesied fall of Jerusalem. The ultimate goal is implied to be the return to the land, but there seems to be no hurry. There's also this name, Tobias.
Yeah, we're going to get into it there. It's all a big family.
Okay, so...
So one thing I did want to point out is in terms of genre, the best scholars can pretty much do to nail it down is it's a romance.
Oh, it's a romance.
A diaspora romance.
Interesting.
So let's get the love story going, I suppose.
All right.
I don't have like jazz
Well,
cue,
why don't
but
you-
just imagine.
have something not close to jazz, but you have something that's more.
You gotta check on that. Let me check on that.
Oh, okay.
So hand me your commentary.
Close enough. That's close enough.
Wow.
Yeah. So sounds good to me.
Not
Here
the
you go.
book. The
What?
commentary.
The commentary.
You read the book.
What?
Wait, should I read the book? There's only one book, okay?
we can hand it off like we did last time.
Okay, take this.
I have a commentary here.
Well, you can have.
I'll
more
have both.
commentary,
I'll have many
because
commentaries.
there's a commentary in here too,
Yes, there is.
and
That is accurate.
I'm not going to handle two commentaries. While
Yeah,
reading it.
that's fair.
Dual.
So, introduction to the Book of Tobit, 1 through 2. This is the story of Tobit, son of Tobiel, son of Hananiel, son of Aduel, son of Gabael, son of Raphael, son of Reguel, from the clan of Asiel, of the tribe of Naphtali, who in the days of King Shalmaneser of Assyria was taken captive from Thisbe.
You all right there?
It's this be, but without a space between the words.
Okay.
So this be, which is south of Kadesh Naphtali and Upper Galilee, northwest of Hazor and north of Fogor. And now I have to turn a bunch of pages. There's extensive commentary about all of their names.
Yeah. So there is just like the most that they have on the names here are just their meanings.
Oh, yeah. So Thisbe, if spelled correctly, is otherwise unknown.
So useful.
Nicholsburg sees this mention of Thisbe in first of a number of parallels between First Enoch and Tobit. In this case, the mystic events of First Enoch 13:4 through 10 are also in northern Galilee. Milik,
Yeah.
identified.
That was one of the Qumran guys who was very very early on.
1966.
Or very early Qumran work.
Yes. Identified it with Tubas, about 20 kilometers northeast of Nablus in the ancient Roman road between Wadi Farah and the village of Tayer. So that is where it is.
Okay. And just on some of the names, it doesn't really mean all that much, like, of importance. I mean, for example, Tobiel means God is my good. Hananiel means God has shown mercy. Raphael, God heals. Yeah. So it is. So these names in Tobit's genealogy suggest the piety of his family. Makes sense, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So the book begins as historical annals do with, quote, the book of the deeds, Biblos Logon. Some of the historical information in the title, however, is incorrect.
Oh, no.
The author has confused Tiglath-Pileser III, the Assyrian ruler who deported the citizens of Galilee, with his successor Shalmaneser V, who began the siege of Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom. Shalmaneser's successor, Sargon II, defeated the northern kingdom, destroyed the capital city, and took captive the 10 tribes of Israel. Duh, no.
How would you make such a mistake in the first two verses?
I don't know. To be fair, I've done stuff like that.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I've made a mistake in like for the first sentence of a video.
And, over millennia, it was never fixed or corrected by anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep going.
Which is strange because scribes fix stuff all the time. And
Here's
if they thought information was wrong, they
a
fix it.
mutual friend of ours, Richard, the new re-release of Final Fantasy VII's audio and dialogue have errors from the original game that have not been fixed.
Huh.
The same text. So you'd think, right? You've
that
had
someone would fix it.
14, 15 years, something like that, to develop your game again for a new engine. Why didn't you fix that?
Yeah.
Because
Good question.
it's a meme.
Yeah, I bet that's because it was a meme at that point.
Okay, so yeah, they just had to keep it that way.
Do you think that could have happened here? Not for sure, but
No,
something
I don't think so.
of culture has an attachment to the flaw that was developed. Who knows?
No,
Not
I
all
would
the
say
time.
that the scribes would have been way too pious to let that one slide if they saw
I
a
remember
mistake.
some scribes in the Middle Ages drawing snails with flails and like babies.
No, those were things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you remember those in school? You learned about the
Snail
snails with
flail.
flails. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, man.
Anyways,
No, scribes are weird.
It was an AP history.
Let's keep going. There's a lot to get through.
Yeah.
Okay.
I, Tobit, have walked in the paths of truth and righteousness all the days of my life. I have performed many charitable acts for my kinsmen and for my fellow Israelites who had been deported with me to Nineveh in the land of Assyria. When I was still a young man living in my own country, Israel, the entire tribe of my ancestor Naphtali deserted the house of David in Jerusalem. Yet this city, which had been chosen from among all Israel's tribes for all tribes of Israel in which to offer sacrifice, where the temple, the dwelling of God, had been consecrated and established for all generations to come, all my countrymen, including the house of my ancestor Naphtali, used to sacrifice to the calf which King Jeroboam of Israel had made in Dan, as well as on all the mountains of Galilee. Only I alone went frequently to Jerusalem for the festivals as is prescribed for all Israel in an eternal decree.
So it's interesting that he only lists Dan there as a place.
It's also interesting that he lists specifically the calves that were made by King Jeroboam.
Yeah. So when the 10 northern tribes separated from Judah in the 10th century BCE, their king Jeroboam did not want his people to continue worshiping in Jerusalem. The temple was a strong reminder of the power of David and Solomon. The temple liturgy encouraged support of the Davidic monarchy, which continued to rule in Judah. So Jeroboam built 2 alternate shrines for the people in his kingdom, one in Bethel and one in Dan. Since he had no Ark of the Covenant, he installed golden bulls, or calves, in each of these shrines, presumably as pedestals for the God of Israel. These bulls are always judged to be idolatrous by the authors of the books of Kings, of course, who are from the southern kingdom, Judah. In fact, they may well have been occasions for idol worship by the Israelites in the north. May well have. Of course they were. If they existed at all, which there is a good chance of that, considering the culture. There's a whole video on it. You guys got it. Yeah.
I'll also point out that this is all first person. So this begins like the story of Ahikar, beginning in first person. But afterwards, from 3:7 on, the story is told in third person by an omniscient narrator.
Okay. So
Honestly, I'm liking the first person perspective more in these stories.
Well, this is what you get.
Yeah, you get what you get.
Tobit claims that even though he lived in the north and was a citizen of the northern kingdom of Israel, he never participated in the worship at Dan. He even claims that he went alone to Jerusalem to worship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still don't know why it's only the one mention there.
Strange.
Yeah.
Well, I would hurry off to Jerusalem.
Maybe because I guess he wouldn't have been... Actually, yeah, wouldn't he... You know what? It doesn't matter. No. Why does... why only the one mention of Dan? That's weird.
Because they're just referencing the calf that was made by King Jeroboam.
Yeah, but
in
only at Dan there was the other one at Bethel.
Well, he's referencing the people that his ancestors
Oh, all right. So
sacrificed to.
So for Naphtali, the tribe of Naphtali,
Yeah. So
Okay.
the tribe of Naphtali would sacrifice
the one at Dan.
to the one at Dan.
Okay,
Which, I don't know. Do we have reason not to believe that's accurate?
I don't know. I mean, that's fair. Fair enough.
Fair. Okay. I would hurry out to Jerusalem with the first fruits of the crops and herds, as is tradition, as well as the tithe of the cattle and the first shearings of the sheep. I would give these to the priests, descendants of Aaron, at the altar. Likewise, the tithe of the grain, wine, olive oil, pomegranates, and other fruits to the Levites ministering in Jerusalem. Also, except for the sabbatical year, I would convert a second tithe into money, and I would go annually to Jerusalem and spend it. A third tithe I would give to the orphans, widows, and converts who had attached themselves to Israel. I would bring it to them in the 3rd year, and we would eat it according to the commandment decreed concerning them in the law of Moses, and according to the instructions of Deborah, the mother of my father Tobiel, for when my father died, he left me a full orphan. When I became an adult, I married a woman from our own clan and had a son by her, and I named him Tobiah.
So the little thing on tithes, so of course those, paying the priests and whatnot, that popped up all throughout Leviticus, especially, right? So in the post-exilic period, when the entire Pentateuch became normative, the 3 passages, and of course the 3 passages being referred to are Leviticus 27, 30 through 33. We have Numbers 18, 21 through 22. Actually, hold on. There's a lot more actually too. That's
and there's commentary on it.
Yeah, and also okay, so there's the one in Leviticus, one in Numbers, and one in Deuteronomy. So they were interpreted as referring to 3 different tithes. Thus, the first fruits of crops and the firstborn of animals were to go to the priests in the temple, and the first tithe of crops and animals to the Levites. The second tithe was interpreted in 2 ways. Either the tithe for the banquet was replaced by the poor tithe in the 3rd and 6th years, or the poor tithe was levied over and above the banquet tithe in those years, thus becoming a 3rd tithe. Josephus regarded the poor tithe as a 3rd tithe. So lots of stuff on tithes there.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in here. So exactly what the author of Tobit originally said in 6 through 8 about tithing is quite difficult to determine for at least 2 reasons. First, there are pronounced differences between G2 and G1, which are not easily resolved. Second, that task is complicated by the broader problem of confronting the author of Tobit, namely his particular interpretation or efforts at reconciling the inconsistent, if not contradictory, biblical laws on tithing. In regards to the latter, the author of Tobit was not alone. This was apparently a common issue. People didn't understand the tithes.
Well, there's how many of them?
Just give stuff to the priests.
Yeah, but how many tithes are there? Did you just
just give stuff to the priests?
It's like 12.
Just give stuff to the priests.
Anyways,
people didn't understand 12 things.
What was once regarded as the annual tithe to the priesthood and the sanctuary had to be reinterpreted later on as one among others. For instance, in Davidic times, there was also a tithe for Levites in local sanctuaries, as well as for those Levites in Jerusalem. Then, with the Deuteronomic Reformation and its closing of all Yahwistic shrines and the centralization of worship in Jerusalem, Deuteronomy 14:27 through 29 has the pilgrim use that tithe in the 3rd and 6th years of the 7-year sabbatical cycle, not only for the relief on the landless Levites, but also for strangers, orphans, etc., etc. Later, in post-exilic times, the first fruits and firstlings were tithed to the priests, and the first tithe was assigned to the Levites. The second tithe was interpreted in 2 ways. In the 3rd and 6th year, the poor tithe, Deuteronomy 14:28 through 29, replaced the tithe for the banquet, Deuteronomy 14:22 through 26, or the poor tithe in those years was levied in addition to the banquet tithe. As Gambaronius noted, the Septuagint's mistranslation of the year of the tithe as to deuteron epidekaton, the second tithe, in Deuteronomy 26:12, has contributed to the confusion. The problem that post-exilic Jews had in reconciling inconsistent/contradictory biblical laws regarding tithes is well illustrated by the differences in verses 6 through 8 between G2 and G1. He provides amended text for both of them. G2 explicitly mentions the 3rd tithe. The Latin versions are not of much help here, except that Old Latin also mentions the 3rd tithe, et tertii ad decimetonium.
Yeah, so and also the situation, it's a when they're talking about the discrepancies in different translations. So one of them mentions a third, 10, which is specified in the Old Latin as a third tithe. Another Greek version describes the tithe of the third year, ento trito ete. So whether Tobit is giving 2 tithes or 3, he is scrupulously careful to follow the law concerning tithes.
Yeah, so a comparison of G2 with G1 of Tobit suggests that G2 describes the earlier practice of Judaism and that G1 represents a correction of it, so as to bring it more into line with later practice.
As is tradition.
Yep. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
When my exile to Assyria occurred, I was exiled and brought to Nineveh. All my relatives in my race ate Gentile food. However, I myself scrupulously avoided eating Gentile food. And because I was mindful of my God with my whole being, the Most High granted me favor and good standing with Shalmaneser, so that I used to buy everything he needed. During his lifetime, I used to travel to Media and buy for him there. I also deposited there pouches containing 10 talents of silver with Gabael, brother of Gabri. But when Shalmaneser died and his son Sennacherib reigned in his place, the roads of Media were barred so that I could no longer travel there. In the days of Shalmaneser, I had performed many charitable acts for my compatriots. I would give my food to the hungry and my clothing to the naked. And if I saw one of my people dead and tossed outside the wall of Nineveh, I would bury him. And if King Sennacherib put to death someone when he came in retreat from Judea, in the days of judgment when the King of Heaven punished him because of the blasphemies he had uttered, I would bury him. For in his anger Sennacherib put to death many Israelites. But I would spirit away their bodies and bury them, so that when Sennacherib looked for them, he could not find them. But a certain Ninevite went and informed the king about me, that I was burying them. So I went into hiding. When I realized that the king knew about me and that I was being searched for to be put to death, I was afraid and I fled. Everything I owned was seized, and I had nothing left that wasn't confiscated for the royal treasury, except my wife Hannah and my son Tobiah.
So this dude's crime is burying bodies.
Yep, without permission.
Okay.
Specifically, I'm going to look at the comment here. Because
so burial of the dead as a practice of charity is a theme found also in Genesis. Jacob makes his proper burial a sign of Joseph's charity and fidelity toward him. Burial is the specific practice of charity that receives the most attention in the book of Tobit.
Yeah, even condemned criminals and the enemy killed in battle should be buried. Probably compassion and certainly hygienic concerns lay behind such charitable practice. In this respect, the Israelites were like the rest of the people of the ancient Near East and the Greco-Roman world, a fact confirmed by the ubiquity of the Grateful Dead motif. I just want to see if... So
one quick note here.
He was betrayed by one of his neighbors, but it doesn't really say much about this. I assume that when Sennacherib would come in, he would kill these people and want them to stay unburied for a while as, like, you know, a sign that you don't do anything against the king, you know, like heads on pikes.
Yeah. So Josephus apparently reports the incident. He tells 3 stories. And this is, you know, about, sorry, I'm going to back up just a little bit here. So Shalmaneser's successor, Sennacherib, ruled Assyria for 24 years. During the reign of Hezekiah, king of Judah, Sennacherib laid siege to Jerusalem at least once and perhaps twice. And, of course, we went over that in, like, 2 Kings. So it is possible that the payment relates to a first invasion in 701 when Sennacherib himself reports claiming that he shut up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage. In 2 Kings 19, the story is told that when Sennacherib was encamped opposite the Ethiopian troops under King Taraka, who had come to help Hezekiah, a disaster struck the Assyrian army and Sennacherib returned home in disgrace. Is this the same invasion or a later one? The presence of Taraka, whose reign did not begin until 690, the occurrence of two differing reasons for Sennacherib's departure, and the announcement of his death immediately following argue for two invasions. So Josephus also reports the same incident. He tells three stories of Sennacherib's disgrace from different sources. Two concern Sennacherib's siege of Pelusium. The third concerns Jerusalem. In the first instance, Sennacherib departs because of the fear of Taraka. In the second, he leaves because mice have chewed up the bows and armor of his soldiers. In the third, he retreats because God has sent a pestilence into the camp. Tobit relates that Sennacherib's anger against the Israelites was great because of his forced retreat from Jerusalem. For this reason, he executed many of them and left them unburied. Thus, the need for Tobit's charitable act of burying the dead increases. This action puts Tobit himself in danger of death. He saves his life by fleeing. Yeah.
So I'm going to finish reading this chapter, and then I have a little bit of commentary from here I want to get into. But not 40 days had elapsed before two of Sennacherib's sons murdered him and then sought refuge in the mountains of Ararat. When his son Asharadan succeeded him, he appointed Ahikar, son of my brother Anael, over all the royal accounts, and he had authority over the treasury accounts. Ahikar interceded on my behalf, so I returned to Nineveh. Under Sennacherib, king of the Assyrians, Ahikar had been the chief cupbearer as well as in charge of the signet ring, the administration, and the accounts. Asharadan appointed him second only to himself. Now, Ahikar was my friend and a close relative. So there's...
And I also want to point out that Asharadan, he has, we still have his, his laws, his rule book or whatever you want to call it. So we have treaties of Asharadan. There are so many parallels between the Asharadan treaties and the Law of Moses, like a lot, like not just in themes, not like just like the regular things you would expect from laws, right? But like very specific ones. It's actually kind of crazy. So I suggest people look into that.
Check it out. But in Asharadan's own account of his brother's revolt, he speaks of it in some detail, but does not dignify them by so much as mentioning their names. According to 2 Kings 19:37, their names were Adramelech and Sharezer. Asharadan's, despite the confusing transliterations of the name here, it's quite clear from verse 22 of 4Q Tob that Asharadan was intended here. For Ahikar, we've already commented on Ahikar earlier in the show, but he does appear further on. There's a little more about this, though. It starts right here. That the theme of the disgraced but rehabilitated minister combined with the ungrateful relative is a very ancient one, was discovered by Reiner in a bilingual text of Mesopotamian proverbs. As noted earlier in this text, there was actually a sage named Ahikar serving in the court of Asharadan, according to an Arukian tablet dating to the Seleucid era. The tablet says of Abaninu Dari that the Aramaeans called him Ahukar.
I know that guy, yeah.
Yep.
My best bud right there.
Great guy. For a brief but good introduction, see Vanderkam's Ahikar. So you might want to check it out. We have stuff from Vanderkam, but not that. Yeah, but under Sennacherib, it says here in verse 22, Ahikar interceded on my behalf, and so I returned to Nineveh under Sennacherib, king of the Assyrians, Ahikar. So 4Q Tob has here Shrib, which Bayer and Martinez simply translate as Ashar-Yarib and Asar-Harib, respectively, evidently regarding it as either another name for the king or less likely another king. Wise and Fitzmyer rightly regard this as an anomalous form for Sennacherib.
Yeah, that's what it would sound like. Just another form for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, Greeks were changing forms all the time for everything. If you were writing, depending on the kind of literature you're writing, like there's regular ancient Greek,
mm-hmm.
and then there are like epic forms of words that you only find in epics, and it's like specifically for like the meter.
Mm-hmm.
It gets very confusing because like if I'm just learning Greek, how the hell am I supposed to tell that this is this supposed to be the same word, or is this in fact just a different word?
Well, I figured that
it's epic.
I figured that growing up, growing up ancient Greek, you would probably come to think of it like we think of like thou and thee.
Yeah. Like I get it. It would make sense if you're like, growing up in that kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm just saying in my class, there's like no direction on that.
Right.
It's just like, here you go. Here's this form of this word. And I'm like, is this the same word or a different word? What am I supposed to be looking for here? Yeah.
Yeah. So that, that's basically the account that I wanted to give from the commentary here. And that is the end of
the chapter. Yeah.
Chapter 1 of Tobit. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, and share it around,
share it around.
It's cool having people in here. So, yeah, why not?
And I'll be right back. Why don't you read something about
I'll start,
Chapter 2?
Yeah, about Chapter 2. Yeah, I suppose I'll read something about Chapter 2 before we start. I think there's a neat little section on it in Erdman's commentary. So this chapter continues the theme of piety begun in Tobit 1. Tobit's special trait is burying the murdered Jews who are left exposed and unburied. As a result of his unselfish actions, he lost all his possessions in Tobit 1. In this chapter, he loses his eyesight. Oh no. He goes blind.
Oh, where'd it go?
Oh, that sucks.
Only he could have seen that coming.
Yeah, that's a shame. And you know what? Now this narrative moves from the general summary of his good life to a specific story of his burying the dead. Okay, so now we're getting more into, more specific stuff. Makes sense. Exactly what they just said that I just now repeated verbatim.
Well played.
So the Vulgate... This is actually kind of cool. So this specific act of charity results, even if indirectly, in the suffering that will afflict him throughout most of the book. This suffering constitutes the conflict of the book. Why is this good man afflicted? This question is asked by Anna, Tobit's wife, and by Tobit himself in his lament. The Vulgate adds a comparison between Tobit and Job. So that's kind of cool. Now this trial, the Lord therefore permitted to happen to him, that an example might be given to posterity of his patience, as also of holy Job. For as the kings insulted holy Job, so his relatives and kindred mocked him, saying, "Where is your hope, for which you gave alms and buried the dead?" By implication, Anna is compared to Job's wife. You know what? This guy is referencing Moore. So Moore notes, however, that this is a false comparison since Job's wife was angry with God, whereas Anna is angry with Tobit. So I guess we'll have to see what Moore has to say about that because the book's right here.
Woo!
Yeah, I guess we'll get to that, shall we?
Yeah, this chapter is going to continue the theme of piety.
I just read that.
Okay. Well, I was taking a whiz.
I know, but I read it all.
Well,
I'm just going to get into the reading.
Get into the reading.
Okay.
Do it.
So, chapter 2. So during the reign of Esarhaddon, I returned to my home, and my wife Hannah and my son Tobiah were restored to me.
Wow.
On the festive day of weeks, a fine dinner was prepared for me, and I reclined to dine. When the table was set before me, I saw the abundance of food placed before me.
We talked a lot about the Festival of Weeks during Jubilees.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to know more about the Festival of Weeks, go check out our episodes on Jubilees. But this is,
This is Tobit.
Yeah.
I said to my son Tobiah, "Lad, go out, and if you find among our captive people in Nineveh any poor person who is wholeheartedly mindful of the Lord, bring him back that he may eat with me.
That sounds reminiscent of the Sodom.
Meanwhile, lad, I will wait for you until you return." I guess it's, very mildly similar to that, find one good person. But seems like he wants to help that specific person.
And it very well may be the case that he doesn't find one good person.
Well, we'll see, shall we?
Yeah.
So Tobiah left to find some poor person of our people, but he returned crying, "Father!" "Yes, lad," I replied. "Father," he answered, "one of our countrymen has been murdered.
So
He's been tossed in the marketplace. He's just been exposed."
So exposed there could be rendered strangled. More says that it shouldn't. I guess this agrees with him. But the basic point being that he sent him out to find a good person, and he came back with a corpse, right?
Pretty much.
So
Yeah,
there
so
you go.
the translation of that word is debatable. Virtually all modern translations, as well as the Old Latin and the Vulgate, rendered estragaletai as he has been strangled. And there's even a 3-word fragment. That's interesting. Of one of the Qumran manuscripts that preserves the reading. So that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. So one of the issues theologically with what's happening here is the rules in Numbers 19:11 through 22 that whoever buries a corpse becomes ritually unclean for a week.
Ah, I see. All right.
In the
I remember
Festival
that.
of Weeks.
Yeah.
So you can't, ritually
Oh.
unclean yourself during the Festival of Weeks.
Oh, man. Oh, what a...
Because that means you won't be able to participate in the entire festival.
We got a dilemma.
Yeah.
Oh, man, he got too many write-ups to go on the field trip.
Jumping up, I left my dinner untasted. I retrieved the body from the marketplace, and I hid it in a safe place until sunset, when I could bury it.
Yep, because otherwise he would be impure.
Yeah.
Even though isn't touching a corpse?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
touching the
it's a
corpse
week
too.
too. It's still a whole week to cleanse yourself.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah, so just let me look this up here.
So, according to Numbers 19:11 through 22, there are several consequences of contact with the dead body. They include the following. 1. A person who touches a human corpse is unclean for 7 days. The ritual for purification calls for washing on the 3rd and 7th days with lustral water, i.e., water in which the ashes of the red heifer have been mixed. 2. The tent in which a person dies is unclean for 7 days. The tent, as well as all the vessels and persons in it, must be sprinkled with lustral water on the 3rd and 7th days. 3. Anyone touched by an unclean person also becomes unclean and renders unclean anyone else who then touches it. 4. The person who remains unclean defiles the sanctuary of the Lord and shall be cut off from the community.
That's right, guys. 1 week quarantines. They existed all the way back then.
Remember, curing leprosy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of a quarantine.
Hang out for 3 weeks, wasn't it?
There is
He
away
was
from
locked in a
everyone.
closet or something.
Yeah.
just lock you in a closet, no light. But further questions are raised by the circumstances. Was there lustral water for purification available to the Israelites in Nineveh? Apparently, the ashes of the red heifer were saved after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE and until the Amoraic period, 3rd to 4th century CE. but their availability in Nineveh is questionable. Was this legal purification necessary chiefly for entrance into the temple?
No, it's all symbolic, just like the body of Christ and the ashes on Ash Wednesday.
Or for purification in the temple liturgy? If so, then the exiles had no immediate legal need for purification.
Huh. Well, all right.
On my return, I washed myself and ate my dinner in sorrow, remembering the words which the prophet Amos had spoken against Bethel, saying, "Your feasts will be turned into mourning, and all your paths into lamentation." Wow, he really stretched just to fit that, didn't he?
What verse is that?
Oh, that is verse 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to just to point out what I meant by he had to stretch to make that. Like out of all things that he could have, out of all the prophecies that he could have used, or all the things that he could interpret as prophecies, he chose that one.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is Amos 8:10.
Yes. So about I washed myself. The references to ablution here and in verse 9 are puzzling. In later rabbinic traditions, impurity or uncleanness resulting from contact with a corpse was, quote, the father of the fathers of uncleanness. Wow. So we're gonna get into that a little bit more when we get to verse 9. But wow, that's rough. All right, and I wept. When the sun had set, I went and dug a grave and buried the body. My neighbors sneered at me. He is still not afraid, they said. Once before, he was hunted down to be put to death for doing this, and he ran away, and here he is burying the dead again. That same night, after I had washed myself, I went into my courtyard and fell asleep by the courtyard wall.
So, two things. One, the burial becomes the occasion for mockery by his neighbors. No one else seems to care that fellow Israelites are lying unburied. Rather, the one man who's tending to his duty is scorned for his actions. His characteristic act of charity seems to result in curse, not in blessing. But Eerdmans points out here that the Sinaiticus text, no Semitic text is preserved, makes no connection between burying a body and spending the night outdoors. Therefore, there is no suggestion that Tobit had to sleep outside. If so, there is no contradiction between his handling of the body in 2:4 and returning to the festival meal, and in burying the body but not returning home. In other words, he slept outside for a reason other than ritual impurity. Perhaps simply that he didn't want to disturb the occupants of the house, or that it was a warm night. On the other hand, the shorter Greek text makes an explicit connection between sleeping outside and his handling of the corpse and stating, "And in that night I returned from burying the body, and being unclean, I slept by the wall of the courtyard." This may represent a secondary interpretation in the light of later practice, but it is always possible that this is an early interpretation or even part of the original text. The whole question of ritual purity is a difficult one.
Clearly.
Yeah, it's rough. Because of the heat, I had left my face uncovered. So I guess it was super hot. However, I did not know there were sparrows on the wall above me until their droppings fell, still warm in my eyes, resulting in white patches. A bird shit in his eyes.
Yep.
That sucks.
Wow. That
sucks.
A bird shit in his eyes.
So he's even more unclean.
Yes.
It says anything Tobit touches will also become unclean and have the power to communicate uncleanness.
Oh my God, he's like Midas, but with uncleanliness.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Although I went to physicians for healing, the more they treated me with various remedies, the worse my eyesight became until I lost my sight.
So
4 years I was blind. All my kinsmen were sorry for me. And for 2 years, Ahikar supported me until he moved to Elimes.
So quite a bit here. Well, not too much. One, I do know that probably at this point in time, doctors were likely to kill you while trying to treat you for things. They didn't have very advanced medical science by any means, and it was more of a cult of personality for most physicians. But also, the attitude towards Tobit's medical condition reflects a traditional belief. Although it is unknown whether scales in the cornea are ever caused by hot bird droppings, Tobit's blindness is attributed to natural causes. Nonetheless, medical assistance is useless to him. Every attempt to heal him drives him further into darkness. See also the woman with the hemorrhage in Mark 5:26, Luke 8:43. Only God has the power to heal. Ben Sira advises that one honor physicians because of their services are needed, but also remember that their gift of healing comes from the Most High. Sirach 38, 1 through 15.
Yeah. That is pointed out in this commentary as well, about, Sirach's whole thing about, he respected the medicine of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got cult of personality. There's really not much more to add on that, honestly. All right.
Did he use the term cult of personality?
What?
Did he use the term cult of personality?
No. So
I would find that incredibly coincidental.
No, that would probably just be, a quotation or straight up plagiarism, depending on how it's written in there. But either way,
it's not written in here. That's what I said.
Oh, you said that. Okay, I thought you were reading.
Yeah, that would make it more coincidental.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I thought you read off cult of personality.
Oh no.
Okay, either way. So a later biblical writer, Sirach, finds it necessary to defend the medical profession. Simpson regards the omission of all this detail by one of the Greek manuscripts as one more evidence of it being later than... Okay, so he's arguing for a textual tradition here. And yet, according to Munter, quote, with the one exception of the uncurable serpent bite, Numbers 21:9, biblical remedies and treatments are all of a rational character and do not involve incantations or magic rites, nor do they include the so-called filth pharmacy. All right. For more details on the Hebrew Bible's view of physicians, as well as the role of physicians as the agents of God and sickness as evidence of demonic powers, see Howard C. Key, Medicine and Healing.
Okay. Well, why don't you continue on?
All right. Bird shit in his eyes. All right. At that time, my wife also used to earn money doing women's work. She would deliver what she had made to her employers, and they would pay her.
So it appears the work she did was weaving, an assumption that's made specific in the Old Latin version. In ancient Mesopotamia, women of the lower classes were employed by temples and the palace in various occupations: cooking, baking, cleaning, spinning, and weaving. Woven cloth was made from both goat hair and sheep's wool. It was dyed and fashioned into various items of clothing. Because of her family's need, in certain canons at least, Anna becomes the Bible's first working mother.
Wow. Incredible. So she would deliver what she had made to her employers, and they would pay her. But one time, it was the 7th of March. 7th of March, all right. When she cut off from the loom the web and delivered it to her employers, who then paid for it in full. They also presented her with a young goat for a meal. And when the kid approached me, it began to bleat.
Yeah, that's what goats do.
Yeah. So, calling out, I asked her, where did the kid come from? It isn't stolen, is it? Take it back to the owners, for we have no right to eat anything stolen. It was given to me as a gift, she replied, in addition to my wages. But I didn't believe her, and I insisted that she return it to the owners. I was ashamed of her because of this.
You can't have nice things. No way.
It was given to me. No, it wasn't. Give it back to whoever you took it from. You thief.
Yeah. Either his deeds seem to have been okay. So he's saying here, initially Anna answers Tobit's suspicion with a simple explanation. In the face of his persistent disbelief and anger, however, she turns the conversation to her own advantage by attacking him on a vulnerable point. Has this occurred in what you read? I don't know where you are.
No, I'm in. I just
finished.
What? No, actually, hold on. I'm almost done with verse 14. Actually, hold on. How about I finish verse 14?
Yeah, it's the last verse in the chapter.
Yeah, so he didn't believe her and whatnot. He was ashamed. Where are your charitable acts? She retorted. What are your righteous deeds? Look where they've got you. Oh, boy. Wow. Mm-hmm. This is...
Is that the end?
Yeah, that's the end of that.
So she retorts.
I think there's...
his trust in the justice of God to reward good deeds seems to have been in vain. Either his apparent good works are false, or he's been betrayed by God. In either case, he is now forced to depend on her. The economy of speech by the narrator in this scene is noteworthy. There's no comment about Anna's emotional state. It is revealed entirely by her words. Anna has now raised a critical question concerning the theory of retribution and Tobit's trust in it. If virtue is truly rewarded with blessing and conversely if suffering is a sign of wickedness, then how can the suffering Tobit claim to be a virtuous man? If the blessings are not there, perhaps the righteousness does not exist either. Eerdmann's comments, rather grabby comments.
Oh, grabby.
The passage contains a whole complex of literary, social, and psychological overtones. Like a good relative, Ahikar supports Tobit. Anna, his wife, now supports him and is accused of stealing a kid. From Tobit's point of view, for Ahikar to support him was a loss of status, but an acceptable one within the family. However, for him to have been supported by his wife was humiliating, not to mention their reduction in living standards. He believed she had even stooped to stealing, which was contrary to his notions of right behavior. However, great their poverty was, from her point of view, she had done what she had to do when his relatives no longer gave them help, and at considerable cost to herself physically and emotionally. The kid was a reward for a job well done. Tobit's lack of trust was therefore even more devastating. This scenario has a very modern ring to it. A man loses his job. The woman who had previously taken care of the home goes out to work, though not at a wage equal to his. She works hard and comes home exhausted, not expecting that she should have to continue the domestic duties as well. The man finds that
but she totally stole that goat.
The man finds that his self-respect is heavily tied up with his job, which is now gone, and he finds it difficult to reverse roles and take on domestic side of things, especially in a culture which may look on that as further process of emasculation. And to add to all the tension, they're having to pinch pennies and forego many of the recreations and luxuries formerly taken for granted. The conflict of the man's pride, even in adversity, versus the woman's pragmatic efforts to keep things going, is commonplace in literature, perhaps best exemplified in Ibsen's A Doll's House. The passage reminds one of the exchange between Job and his wife in Job 2:9-10. In the Testament of Job, the story is developed in a way even closer to that of Tobit. Job's wife, Sittis, has to become a servant to support them. In Tobit 2:11, Anna voices what the narrative is already implied. Tobit has been scrupulously obedient and has done many acts of charity and piety, yet his reward is his own blindness and the suffering of his family and poverty. This draws attention to the fact that Job and Tobit address much the same problem of theodicy. What is the good of being good, since there's no guarantee of a reward or even freedom from suffering? Job's treatment of the subject is much more sophisticated, but Tobit's answer is one that has resonated more strongly with pious Jews and Christians throughout the ages.
Also, I mean, like, here is a good thing that's happening, right? His wife is getting some, is getting this goat to eat. And
he just can't handle it.
No, just can't handle it, apparently. So,
yeah. So if you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share it with friends, family, neighbors, everyone that you know, everyone you've ever met, everyone you've ever seen.
Share it on your Facebook and on your Twitter and on your other social medias. Or text it to people. You can do that.
Yeah. You can send it snail mail too.
You could. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to know before moving on, the translation of that last line there, look where they've got you. So that the exact meaning of the Greek is uncertain. It can, be translated a whole lot of ways. Here are some of them. So the RSV, you seem to know everything. The New Jerusalem Bible, everyone knows what return you have had for them. So here's multiple translations. Everyone can now see what you are really like. Your true character is finally showing itself. These things are known about you. So it's all, sarcastic and what do you have to show for anything? Like, yeah, that kind of.
Of course, it may be the case that he indeed is deserving of some punishment because he didn't observe the cleanliness rituals.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to hand this off to you, and we're going to be hopping into chapter 3.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Exciting. So exciting. So, okay. The title of this section is, In Misery, Tobit Prays for Death.
Oh.
You know what? Me too, Tobit. Me too.
Wow.
Incredible.
Well, yeah, it was very.
Deeply depressed, I sobbed, and with groaning I began to pray. You're righteous, Lord, and all your doings are just. All your ways are merciful and true. You're the judge of the world. Therefore, Lord, remember me and look favorably upon me. Don't punish me for my sins and oversights and for those of my ancestors. They sinned against you and disobeyed your commandments. So you gave us over for spoil, exile, and death to become the talk, a byword, and the object of reproach of all nations among whom you have scattered us. We covered some of that in Jeremiah.
Yeah, and also he's bringing up some very good points.
Yeah. Therefore, your many judgments are true in dealing with me concerning my sins and those of my ancestors, for we have not kept your commandments nor walked the path of truth before you. So now, deal with me as you please. Command that my life be taken from me, that I may be released from the face of the earth and become dust. For it's better for me to die than to live, because I have to hear undeserved insults, and I am overwhelmed with grief. Command, Lord, that I may be free from this suffering. Release me to the eternal resting place. Lord, do not turn your face from me, for it's better for me to die than to endure such great distress in my life than to hear such insults.
Yep, same kind of Job stuff, kind of mixed in with a little bit of Ecclesiastes.
Mm-hmm. Tobit has abandoned any hope for a good death as defined, for example, in Kohelet 6:3. Namely, many children, a long life, good burial. In the Old Testament Apocrypha, the insertion of a prayer is characteristic literary technique for signaling a dramatic change in action. See Judith's prayer in Judith 9, Queen Esther's in the edition C, 1 through 9, a Septuagint of Esther.
We went over all those editions, yeah.
We did in Atheist Sunday School.
Yeah.
This is certainly true of various prayers in Tobit. to wit those of Tobit and Sarah, of Tobiah on his wedding night, and later by the greatly relieved Raguel and the healed Tobit, as well as the song of praise in chapter 13. In the absence of the prophetic voice, 2:6 and 14:4 notwithstanding, the prayers of the believers must be the literary vehicle for expressing the truths of the faith. The prayer is divided into 3 parts.
Yeah,
you can get it.
Stuff, yeah.
You get it. So, anyways, let me continue on here.
It looks like Sarah is about to pray.
Oh, there's pictures too. There's manuscript pictures and gold bowls, and
that's kind of neat.
We'll look over it in a minute. So, on the same day, it so happened that Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, who's lived in Ecbatana of Media, also had to listen to insults from one of her father's servant girls because Sarah had been given in marriage to 7 bridegrooms, but the evil demon Asmodeus had killed them off before each marriage had been duly consummated.
Yeah, so Asmodeus, for anyone that watches Supernatural, you all know who Asmodeus is in that show. He's a prince of hell, but you know what? It doesn't matter because that's not
real.
Yeah, not at all. So on this, 7 brides thing, or 7 husbands, right? Mm-hmm. So another main character is introduced in this section, Sarah, daughter of Raguel. Her name, which means lady or gentlewoman, links her to the ancestral story of Sarah, wife of Abraham. Like Abraham's wife, the Sarah of this story is kept from those for whom she is not destined. Through Tobiah, she will become the mother of sons who are the hope of the future people of God. Ecbatana, the home of Raguel's family, is the ancient capital of Media.
It was also the city mentioned in the original secular folktale, The Bride and the Monster.
The site of modern Hamadan is Iran. It is located in the Zagros Mountains, about 325 miles southeast of Nineveh. So on to Asmodeus, because this is going to be a fun one, talking about a demon here. Sarah is afflicted by the demon Asmodeus, who keeps killing her bridegrooms. The story of her affliction is repeated 5 times in the course of the narrative. In each telling, the emphasis shifts and the suspense heightens. In this section, the narrator presents the basic facts in a simple and straightforward fashion. Sarah has been married to 7 men, whom the demon Asmodeus has killed before the marriages could be consummated. The taunts of the maids repeat the first and last points. So 7 husbands dead before the consummation of the marriages.
So there's quite a bit here on demonology, and you're going to hate it, Lawrence.
Oh, no, am I?
All right.
Numerous demons and evil spirits are mentioned in the Old Testament, many of them representing the remnants of polytheism. Usually they're nameless. Few are mentioned by name, e.g. the Akkadian goddess Lilith, a succuba. In Isaiah 34,
that
14.
would be a class of demon. Yes.
Resheph, the Canaanite god of plague and pestilence, and possibly Azazel, and a couple other things, in Leviticus 16:8, 10, 26. Contrary to popular belief, 2 of the arch-villains in the Hebrew Bible are not given names. The serpent in the Garden of Eden is simply a description, not a name, nor is the supernatural villain in the book of Job named the Satan. It's simply a title. From the intertestamental period on, the importance of demons greatly increased in Jewish literature, with the appearance of Belial/Beliar in Jubilees and Pasim, especially in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Mastema in Jubilees.
I went over some of those things in the Revelation video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Jewish demons were of 3 types: angel-like, human-like, and animal-like. E.g. Asmodeus, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
In the older point of view, demons were either fallen angels or spirits like them. Although the Israelites' trafficking with demons and evil spirits was prohibited under pain of death, Exodus, Deuteronomy, and 1 Samuel, both kings and commoners, as well as biblical writers, believed in their existence. Now, on Asmodeus specifically, this marks the first appearance in Jewish literature of the demon Ashmedai, who will become quite prominent in Talmudic and later Jewish writings. As in Pfeiffer's day, scholars are still debating whether the name is based upon the Hebrew SMD, to destroy, or represents the Persian Eshema Deva, or Asmadiv, the demon of anger, who accompanied Ahriman, the god of evil. In 1920...
I do have a little bit more on that Persian name, actually.
Okay.
So the name of the demon is perhaps derived from the Persian Ashma Deva, demon of wrath. The role of the demon in the story is related to the folktale The Monster in the Bridal Chamber. The hero in this tale is advised by a stranger to marry a wealthy princess whose former bridegrooms have all perished in the bridal chambers. On the wedding night, a serpent emerges from the mouth of the bride princess to kill the hero. The stranger kills the serpent and frees the bride from her affliction. In the book of Tobit, Sarah will be freed from her affliction through the assistance of the angel Raphael.
Mm-hmm. In 1920, Scheftlowitz regarded that such an equation is impossible. And over 60 years ago, Gray identified with Persian... Gray insisted that Tobit's Asmodeus could not, etymologically speaking, be the Persian words for sky demon, Asma, anger, wrath, fury, Deva, God. It could not be god of anger, but must be the Persian words for sky demon. In other words, Tobit's Asmodeus actually represents a Jewish demotion of the Zoroastrian Ahura Mazda from chief god to chief devil. More recently, Barr has also offered a philological objection to identifying Asmodeus with Aismadeva. Still, Sarah's living in Media makes, for many present-day scholars, the identification of Tobit's Asmodeus with Aismadeva very tempting indeed. In any event, so important was Ashmadeva in the Avesta that only Angra Manu and Druj Lai were mentioned more often. So
one of the most important beings in the Avesta. Okay.
Yeah. Now let's continue on here. Unless you have more.
No.
Okay. Someday we might read the Avesta.
Yeah. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. So her bridegrooms keep dying. So the servant girl said to her, "You're the one who's killing off your bridegrooms. Look at you. You have already been given in marriage to 7 bridegrooms, yet you've not taken the name of any of them. Why do you beat us? Because your husbands are dead? Go and join them. May we never have to look at a son or daughter of yours."
Damn. Okay, so wait, so does she beat her servants then? These servants?
I guess so.
All right then.
That day
Because she's salty about her dying husbands? Okay.
Yep. That day she was so depressed that in tears she went upstairs to her father's house intending to hang herself. But she reconsidered, saying to herself, "Never will they reproach my father by saying to him, 'You had only one beloved daughter, yet she hanged herself because of her troubles.' I would cause my father in his old age to go down to his grave in sorrow. It's better for me not to hang myself, but to pray to the Lord to have me die, so that I no longer have to listen to such insults, nor my father either."
What verse was that?
That was verse 10.
Okay.
At that precise moment, with hands outstretched toward the window in prayer, she said, "Blessed are you, merciful God. May your holy and honored name be blessed forever, and may your creation be praise you forever. And now I've turned my face to you and lifted my eyes. Command that I be released from the earth, never again to hear such taunts. You know, Master, that I am innocent of any defilement with a man, and I have disgraced neither my name nor that of my father in the land of my exile. But I am my father's only daughter. He has no other child to be his heir, nor has he any close or distant relative for whom I might save myself to become his wife.
Yeah, I just want to point out, just because it's textually interesting. So the word that's used for master, I think it's also used for master earlier. But a different word was used for master earlier. For an earlier one, it was kurios, which could also mean Lord, used for a lot for Jesus in the New Testament. And here it's despota, which also means master. But either way, both of them can mean master. But it's interesting how how we have the same translation of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, the word is different. Yeah.
All right. So already 7 of my husbands are dead. These are in quotation marks. Why should I go on living? But Lord, if it pleases you not to take my life, listen now to their taunting. So here I have a bunch.
Is this like a Tale of Two Cities kind of thing, where you have these?
I was literally going to say that earlier.
It's a Tobit kind of thing.
Right,
Tale of Two Cities.
Right,
copied.
Of course.
So we have this this gold bowl from Ekbatana.
Okay.
Very.
That's beautiful.
Wonderful.
Why don't you read the description there?
Like other gold bowls from ancient Persia, this one from Ekbatana, home of Sarah, attests to the great skill of Achaemenian goldsmiths. Then they have a picture of the Qumran fragments from Qumran.
Great.
You can read those.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pause
Just
the video and
read them.
Read them.
Yeah, with the brilliant quality that you're getting.
Yeah, and the Mesopotamian demon Pazuzu.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
We love Pazuzu for some reason.
I don't know why they included this with some random bit about the reign of Asharadon. Maybe this is Asharadon.
Well, Sardon would be, important.
Yeah, look at him.
During the reign of Sardon, Ahikar was. Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Ahikar?
It would be Sardon because he's all like he has all the kingly garb on him and shit.
And here's the angel Raphael.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Okay, well, we got lots of. There's more Raphael and Tobit, right?
Raphael.
Yeah, got some pictures. That's what we're looking at.
There's Tobiah and Sarah in their wedding chamber.
Oh,
There's a dog.
is it raunchy?
There's no, they're sleeping.
That's not raunchy at all.
There's a dog in the wedding chamber in the picture, but it notes that there's not a dog there in the story.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah, I guess the artist was just like, I would like there to be a dog here.
Yeah, earlier in the book, he does say that he is a descendant of Raphael, son of Raguel. Right?
Yes.
I don't think you should take that to be Raphael.
No, it wouldn't be
angel.
No, of course not. He's not the son of an angel or the grandson or whatever.
No,
he's not a
Nephilim.
Nephilim.
These images of Raphael just thrown in.
Because we're getting Raphael.
Oh, are we? Are we
Yeah.
getting an additional Raphael?
We're getting the angel Raphael.
Ah, jeez. Okay.
In fact, the next section is called God's Answer to Both.
Okay.
Raphael.
Yeah. So God sends Raphael to answer their prayers. So now we get an additional Raphael who's unrelated.
This is the angel Raphael.
Unrelated to Tobit, but Tobit
related
is
to
related
Tobit, but
to
not related
a
to-
Raphael.
Yeah.
No Donatellos, though, or Michelangelos.
No.
At that precise moment, the prayers of both of them were heard in the glorious presence of God. So, Raphael was sent to heal the two. To Tobit, by removing the white patches from his eyes so that he might see God's light with his eyes. And to Sarah, daughter of Raguel, by giving her in marriage to Tobiah, the son of Tobit, and by loosening the evil demon Asmodeus from her, because it was more Tobiah's right to inherit her rather than all who had desired to marry her. At that precise moment, as Tobit returned from his courtyard to his house, Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, also went down from the upper room. So, okay.
So the thing is, it already kind of seems like the story's over because we've just been told the ending.
Yep.
Like they just threw in a spoiler. So scholars often point out that these verses destroy the suspense by telling the reader the outcome of the plot in advance. However, creating suspense is not the main purpose of this story. Its main purpose is to show God's action in the lives of ordinary believers. These verses serve the purpose well.
John has diabetes.
Mm-hmm. Great. So if you remember in First Enoch, they listed Raphael, one of the holy angels, for he is the spirits. He is of the spirits of man.
Yes. So there's more here on Raphael. So Raphael is not mentioned in the Hebrew Bible nor in the New Testament, but this is probably an accident. He features strongly enough in a number of Jewish writings, at least as early as First Enoch.
Yeah, in First Enoch, he's the one who's sent to bind hand and foot Azazel, and throw him into the darkness.
Not Asmodeus.
And Raphael is the one who makes the hole in the desert to cast Azazel into it.
Okay. Yeah, he's regularly one of the archangels alongside Gabriel and Michael.
Yeah, these Michael, Uriel, Gabriel, and Suriel were inscribed on the towers of the last battle, 1 QM 915, and he was evidently included among the 7 archangels in the angelic liturgy from Qumran, although none of them are mentioned by name. Raphael is also numbered among the archangels in the Apocalypse of the Life of Adam and Eve, which...
Yeah, so this book is, I guess it would be a staple in angelology and demonology. Like this would be like, one of the books that we would go to if we want to learn about their ancient conceptions.
Yeah, so in apocalyptic and later Jewish literature, the role and activities of Raphael, like those of Asmodeus, were greatly expanded. Raphael by then being featured in biblical narratives where originally he was not mentioned. For example, in charge of every human wound and disease, Raphael is said to have banished 9/10 of the unclean spirits in Noah's day, and to have given him a holy book containing herbal remedies. Raphael healed Abraham's painful circumcision, and was sent to rescue Lot from Sodom. He also healed Jacob's thigh after the latter had wrestled with God's surrogate, the archangel Michael. For further discussion of these and other extra-biblical activities of Raphael, see Ginsburg. Not
Ginsburg,
that
Ginsburg,
but different Ginsburg.
Yeah.
It has a Z. Ginzberg.
Yeah, you can reference that one. Is that did you already finish the chapter?
Oh yeah, that's
all right. Great. Then we have one final chapter to go.
Yes, one to go.
For today, obviously.
Yeah.
Lots more to go in this Tobit.
Well, not even that many. It's not like a super...
Yeah, no, it's not. We're already like halfway through the pages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Here's all that stuff for you.
Wow, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Lawrence.
you're welcome. All right.
So the text of this chapter is somewhat problematic.
Oh, it's problematic. Of course it is.
Verses 7 through 12 are absent from Sinaiticus. The text of the Vaticanus is normally used to fill the gap. A few verses of a Hebrew text from Qumran, 4Q200, are partially preserved for this section. So
that's something.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Chapter 4. Expecting to die, Tobit counsels Tobiah about life and his money at... I don't know how to pronounce this name. Whatever. Okay. So that same day, Tobit remembered the money he had deposited with Gabael and... how should we say this? I'm not going to say Rages as his name. Ragus? Should I say Ragus? I'm going to say Ragus. It's
Rajas.
Rajas?
Rages.
Ragesh? No, Rages?
Rages.
No, it's spelled as the word rages, but it has an accent over the A.
Rajas.
Rajas?
Yeah.
Okay. Rajas. So with Gabriel at Rajas in Media, and he thought, now that I have asked for death, why should I not call my son Tobiah and tell him about the money before I die? So he called his son Tobiah. And when he came to him, Tobit charged him, lad, when I die, give me a decent burial. Honor your mother and don't abandon her as long as she lives. Do whatever pleases her and don't grieve her spirit in any way. Remember her, lad, because she faced many dangers for you while you were in her womb. And when she dies, bury her beside me in the same tomb. So, classic Bible stuff.
Yeah, so the section resembles the biblical wisdom literature, especially the Wisdom of Ben Sira, a book written about the same time as the book of Tobit. The responsibility of parents to instruct their children and of children to heed that instruction is a frequent wisdom theme. Ben Sira says, he who teaches his son will make his enemies envious and will glory in him among his friends. When the father dies, he will not seem to be dead, for he has left behind him one like himself. Proverbs advises the child to heed the instruction. My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments for the length of days and years of life, and abundant welfare they will give you. The instruction, honor one's mother, is especially significant. Children are to be particularly solicitous when the parents are old. This is also in Sirach.
That's pretty much the whole point of having kids for some cultures, right? Just so they can help you when you're old.
And it's pretty useful, given that when you're old, you're pretty much useless.
Yeah, I understand it's useful. I don't know, it just kind of seems like you're just making your own personal slaves, but whatever.
Well, of course, if they raise them correctly, they'll be happy doing that.
Correctly.
Yeah, like instilling in them religious virtue of servitude and submission.
Yeah.
Don't ask too many questions now.
Yeah, so echoes of the Pentateuch also appear in this section. In Jacob's farewell address, he requests proper burial from his sons. The command in the Decalogue is to honor parents, that's singled out for emphasis by a motive clause, that you may have a long life in the land. The primary Pentateuchal influence, however, is Deuteronomy, in which the duty of parents to instruct their children is emphasized. Israel is exhorted to teach the children the saving deeds of God. The great commandment to love God is to be drilled into the children. Much important instruction is to be given as a response to the question of children when your son asks you. This occurs in Deuteronomy twice. In the closing chapters of Deuteronomy, the injunction to educate the children regarding God's law appears twice. Yeah. So, there you go.
Lad, remember God all your days. Never deliberately sin or violate his commandments. Do good. It's interesting that they say deliberately because wasn't there a thing where you didn't have to know that you were violating it?
Right.
Yeah. So that's interesting that the word that is included there, deliberately.
See if there is.
I mean, I'll check any, for any commentary on that.
Because there doesn't appear to be any such commentary in here.
All right, so that's verse 5. So let's see verse 5. Yeah, okay, so never deliberately sin. Literally, this is what it says literally. Do not wish to sin. So, okay, so that does assume deliberately. Interesting. Okay.
I think that's a completely different statement.
Yeah, but it would assume that's deliberate. Like if,
Yes,
if you
but
wish to sin,
do not
and
wish to sin and
I know.
do not deliberately sin are
I know.
completely different.
I know that they're
things.
different things. I know that they are because one is specifically a thought crime,
Mhm.
and the other is actually doing it. But like,
Oh, did you really just think that right now? That's illegal.
no.
No.
So while I get that they are in fact different, the point that I'm getting at is the deliberation in that, the on purpose thing.
Yeah.
Because that would be the part that we were talking about before.
No, I disagree. People have intrusive thoughts all the time that they don't intend to have.
No, yes, I get that. But if you are going to sin
It's so hard to figure out
deliberately,
intent. Oh man.
like if you are going out of your way
Uh-huh.
to do something that goes against the commandments or whatnot,
Yeah.
then that is different.
Let's say you're
From-
translating a sentence
Okay.
and it says, do not wish to sin, right?
Yeah.
What would you translate that as? Would you translate that as do not deliberately sin?
No, I would translate that as do not wish to sin.
Exactly. So
Although
That's-
because I don't know what the exact what the Greek for that is. I don't think it's only one of the words is given, so I'm not sure. Thelesius. So I'm not 100% certain on that, but like the point that I'm getting is on the premeditated thing, because that's the part where that would go against what we have learned from other biblical texts,
Mhm.
because they would
But the
fight for-
premeditated thing is like the translator's artificial insertion into the text. The sentence doesn't even say that.
well, the thing is, it would assume that, because if you
Yeah, the author's artificial insertion assumes that.
I think that wishing to sin would assume that.
Well, you don't always intentionally, like, if you have an intrusive thought that is like, oh yeah, I want that. Like, that's the whole basis of like commercial sales, is to force people to have intrusive wishes. Right? If it didn't work that way, then I mean,
Right, but then people do buy those things often.
Mm-hmm.
What?
But just having the thought, oh yeah, that looks good, I want that. That doesn't imply that you're actually going to go through with the action.
No, but it does imply that if you do go through with the action, then it means that you had that thought.
Not necessarily.
Okay, we're not talking about like fucking coercion here,
Right.
or like you've been
coercion.
like, or you've been like mind controlled or something.
just
Dude,
absent.
not talking about
She
mind
didn't
control.
have an intent.
Didn't have an intent. Just absent.
flat out.
Just
like if
You ever just
here.
No, you've never done that.
Because the entire Bible is so ridiculous, I can use this example. Have you ever bitten something like a snack, a potato chip, anything just absent-mindedly without like looking really intently at it?
yes, I have.
Yeah. You know how many dietary restrictions there are in the Bible
Quite
that are
a
sins
lot.
if you break them?
a lot.
Yeah, you could very easily absent-mindedly sin without intending to do so.
A lot of this stuff has to be prepared properly,
Mm.
and it's very specific animals and stuff.
Yeah, but those are for like sacrificial animals usually.
No, usually it's for eating too. Like some animals you just can't eat because they're unclean.
Yeah, they're unclean, but like let's say you had like a whole thing of locusts, which are kosher. Certain locusts are specifically labeled as kosher, right? And you're eating these fried locusts, and you happen to get one that's not kosher. Right? You don't even know.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, exactly. So that's why the wishing to sin or the doing it deliberately would matter there.
But
because okay, so if it's on accident like that,
we have to move on.
the terminology used in the language doesn't imply committing any sins. Why would he translate it as committing a sin? There's no reason to do so. Like,
the issue isn't over the word sin. That's definitely
no, it's not over the word sin. It's about the way that he phrases his sentence such that it completely changes the meaning of the sentence.
Yes.
Fine, that's
it is
annoying.
about that.
You win.
I get that it's about that, but my interest primarily was over the philosophical change from, even if you sin on accident, it's still a sin. Even if you sinning on accident.
It's not a genuine philosophical change because it's only reflective of what this dude says. If in the original text, people would have read it differently when they were reading it during their time.
I don't have the original text. I have the...
If it says the literal translation is "do not wish to sin,"
yes,
right? Then people at the time
for never deliberately sin.
That's the translation that he uses, never deliberately sin. That's not what is said in the original language. And because in the original language, they're referencing thought crimes. And thought crimes are in the Bible. You can't, be covetous of your neighbor's possessions and stuff, right? So it's supposed to be a reference to thought crimes. He mistranslated it. He knowingly mistranslated it. And people at the time of when this was written, reading those copies, would have read it as against being thought crimes. So that's the theological implication for it. I mean, unless throughout the entire history of English translations of Tobit, they've always used the phrase, which is incorrect, that he uses here.
Oh, wait, hold on. There's actually a little bit. There's one note here. Okay, so some of... Oh, I see. So one of the Greek manuscripts just straight up omits the word sin, and then the following word as well. So in full, so never deliberately sin or violate his commandments. So sin or, apparently that entire section is omitted.
Okay, well, why don't you continue?
In some manuscripts. That's kind of neat. Okay.
Continue on to some
either way.
Scrutiny.
So do good works as long as you live and never walk in the ways of wrongdoing. For those who act honestly will be successful in all their actions. To all those who act righteously, give alms from your possessions, and let not your eye be evil when you give alms. Never turn your face from any poor person, and God will never turn his face from you. Give alms, lad, in proportion to what you have. If you have much wealth, then give more. If you have little, don't be afraid to give alms from the little you have. For you will be storing up good treasure against the day of adversity.
So, almsgiving is perhaps the most significant virtue in the book of Tobit. The development of the concept conveyed by this word is one of the major contributions of this book to Old Testament theology. Griffin describes 4 categories of meaning for elemosne, I guess, in this book as 1, charitable deeds, 2, as monetary alms and almsgiving, 3, as characteristics of a person, specifically Tobit, and 4, as characteristic of God. The 3rd and 4th categories represent most of the usage in the Old Testament, with the exception of the later books, Ben Sira and Daniel. The first 2 categories represent New Testament usage. This is definitely a Catholic author. Referring to Ben Sira as a book in the Old Testament. The book of Tobit, along with Ben Sira, in which all four meanings are represented, stands at the midpoint of the development of the word. The active expression of eleemosine in charitable deeds and monetary alms predominates in the book. Tobit specifies his charitable deeds as feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and burying the dead. He enjoins the same acts of eleemosine on his son. The basic principle regarding almsgiving are the same in Tobit and Deuteronomy, although the concept is not as fully developed in the latter. Alms are to be given willingly and in proportion to one's income. Charity to the needy is restricted to those within the community. Ben Sira, however, is the most similar to the book of Tobit in the theology regarding almsgiving. According to Ben Sira, giving alms delivers the giver from sin, and is a worthy offering before God. The almsgiver is saved from premature death and destruction. The giving of alms is limited, however, to the righteous. The amount to be given is to be decided according to the means of the giver, but without fear or hesitation.
And it's also pointed out here. So the idea of almsgiving is really central in the book. However, Nicholsberg has observed the performance of charitable deeds is the responsibility in Tobit only of the male characters. The book as a whole is addressed to the wealthy. The women in this story thus have no possessions from which they can give alms.
Mm-hmm.
Classic.
So, because they can't offer sacrifice, because they're in exile, so they can't sacrifice at the temple, almsgiving is an alternative.
Mm-hmm. All right, so, give proportionally, I suppose. For you will be storing up good treasure against the day of adversity. After all, almsgiving delivers from death and postpones your going into the darkness. No, it doesn't. In the sight of the Most High, almsgiving is a worthy offering for all who give it. Lad, beware of every kind of fornication. Above all, marry a woman from the stock of your ancestors. Don't marry a foreign woman who is not of your father's tribe. For we are sons of the prophets. Remember, lad, that Noah, Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob, who are our earliest ancestors, all married women from among their kindred. They were blessed in their children, and their descendants shall possess the land. Therefore, lad, love your kindred, and don't be too proud to take from your kindred, from the sons and daughters of your people, a wife for yourself. For in arrogance there is ruin and much confusion. So, classic Ezra and Nehemiah stuff here.
The theme of taking a wife from among one's own kin is an important emphasis of the book of Tobit. It was also in Jubilees. Specific references made to the father's tribe. Does this mean that Israelites were to marry from within their own tribe? This may be in the mind of the writer, but it's unlikely. Nowhere else is it ever suggested that Israelites had to marry only within their own tribe, suggesting that tribe here is being used generally to mean the broader Israelite community. As a beleaguered minority in Mesopotamia and many other sites in the diaspora, the Jews would have been in danger of losing both their ethnic and their religious identity if they married with their Gentile neighbors. A convenient excuse.
And in idleness, there is loss and dire poverty, because idleness is the mother of hunger. Don't keep overnight the wages of anyone who shall work for you, but pay that person immediately. If you will serve God, you will be repaid. Watch yourself in all actions, lad, and be disciplined in all your behavior. What you yourself hate, do not do to anyone. And don't drink wine to excess or let drunkenness accompany you on your way. So that's also
that's something that frequently appears in wisdom literature.
Yeah, tons of stuff on that in Ben Sira especially. He had a whole thing about, moderation, don't get plastered.
Yep. Sirach 31:25, let not wine drinking be the proof of your strength.
Yep, there you go.
Oh man, darn. That was shoot. Now I don't have any strength left.
Give some of your bread to the hungry and some of your clothing to the naked. Give all your surplus as alms. And when you give alms, let not your eye be evil. Pour your wine at the grave of the righteous, but give none to sinners. Ask advice of every poor person. Sorry, of every wise person. Why did I say poor person?
Neither Sinaiticus nor the Aramaic is preserved for verse 17. Vaticanus reads literally, pour your bread, Old Latin has wine, upon the grave/tomb of the righteous, and do not give to the sinners. Various suggestions have been made as to its meaning, and the varying translations of the different English versions are an attempt to make sense of the difficult passage. What does seem to be clear, however, is that this is borrowed from the Proverbs of Ahikar. The Proverbs were not originally Jewish, but were apparently taken over by the Jews at some point.
Yeah, we went over that, this specific one, actually, in the introduction to the show.
Yeah, and the practice of placing bread on tombstones and offering food to the dead is expressly forbidden by Deuteronomy, one of the main sources for the theology of Tobit. It probably refers to gifts of food for the mourners.
That makes sense. Ask advice of every wise person, and don't take lightly any sound advice. Bless the Lord God at every opportunity. Ask him to make your ways straight and all your paths and plans to prosper. None of the heathen nations has counsel, but the Lord God himself will give them good counsel. Interesting. But the Lord humbles whomever he wishes, as he chooses. Therefore, lad, remember these commands and never let them be erased from your mind. But now, lad, I must tell you about the 10 talents of silver that I deposited with Gabael, son of Gabri, at Ragesh, or Rages. I forgot already how we were doing it in media. Lad, don't be anxious because we have become poor. You have great wealth if you fear God. Flee from all sin and do what is good in the sight of the Lord your God. And that is the end of the chapter.
10 talents is not an insignificant amount.
Yeah.
I want 10 talents of silver.
Don't we
was
all?
It 4? Was it 4? 4 is still a good number. Like, they were talking about...
No, it was 10.
It was 10. Yeah, that's like government level. You know, they were exchanging that for, like, kings' ransoms.
Yeah. Well, so that's the end of the chapter, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And how many chapters are in Tobit?
You know, how about we check? I don't think there's that many. It's not, like, super long.
It seems
let's see.
pretty short.
Is it 14, really?
14.
Hot damn.
Wow.
Yeah, 14 chapters.
Well,
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
well, we hope that everyone enjoyed this so far. A little long show today, over 2 hours, but
That's okay.
we covered a lot about Tobit.
Oh, also, that the name that I can't even pronounce. So, in Greek, it's En Ragois, but it's the modern Iranian town of Rai. So there's that.
All right.
I feel like it'd be easier to say Rai, but I'm going to have to go with the translation that is provided to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We hope you all enjoyed the show and
check
learned.
us out on Patreon.
We hope you enjoyed learning about Tobit, and we hope that you thought it was enlightening to see dude, have a bird shit in his eyes.
And go blind.
Yeah, and go blind, of course. And, he went to some doctors, but they just made it worse. And
Sounds about right.
What a weird story. I mean...
And then he argues with his wife.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, you couldn't have got a free goat. That's impossible.
yeah, you stole the goat.
You had to have.
yeah.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Amusing stuff. So, it's at least we're not in Jubilees.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you everyone
just wait until we do another Genesis recap.
Genesis Recap 3.
Why would I want that? I don't think.
Why would you want
I don't want
Because
that.
we want people to come to our Patreon and donate $1 a month to get access to our video scripts.
Yeah, all of
Or-
our video scripts, they're there.
Yeah, $5 a month or $10 a month or $20 a month.
$10 a month, you can get entered into the t-shirt giveaways every month.
Yeah, and for $50 a month, you could be on this show once a month, or any of our other weekly shows once a month.
Yeah.
And in addition to that,
Teespring, we got lots of cool, nifty shirts on Teespring. If you don't want to, be on the wheel at the beginning of every month, why not just get a shirt if you want a shirt?
yeah, there's also a ton of other stuff. I mean, we got an Amazon wish list if you want to support us.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of stuff on that wish list.
Yeah, stuff that we can read on the show for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, and it doesn't take up space in your house.
Like it does with this table.
Yep.
We're going to have a library at some point. We're not worried about the space for books. We like books.
Yeah, books are great. So anyway, lots of stuff on the Amazon wish
have
list.
a tablet instead of having all of these tomes.
Yeah, but the thing is, not
Then
every
the tomes.
not every book is available.
It is if you scan it into.
Yeah, scanning. Yeah,
You want to scan Eerdmans?
No, it's
Can
it's
you
literally it's literally 1,200 pages or something like that. Oh no.
No, it's over 1,500 pages.
Yeah, it's like 1,600 pages actually.
And we include the indexes. and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Yeah. Which, of course, you would.
yeah. You would.
With that being said,
Yeah.
we'll see you.
Facebook and Twitter, free to follow us on there.
Facebook and Twitter. And we'll
We'll
see
see you on Sunday.